here. So welcome. We're glad you're here. So we're happy you're here. We're happy to be here. Rhonda and I have spent a lot of time the last week looking at this PowerPoint. We've talked a lot about writing over the last few years, and I know I taught fourth grade for several years, and I never really felt that I had the kind of training that I felt like I needed. So we've done a lot of research on best practices, and we're going to talk about some of those today. We are recording the session, so if you need to leave or if you have any technical issues, we will send the recording out, no worries. So as you come in, if you haven't done that yet, please go ahead and put your name, your school, and your county into the chat box for our records so that we can tell that you've been here for attendance purposes. And then we will talk more later about the artifacts that you can do for earning your points. My name is Suzanne Beck. I've worked with NEFAC for about 1.5 years, and I spent several years teaching fourth grade writing, and then I moved to first grade and second grade. So as we go today, we've incorporated a lot of various grade levels. We've kind of done it in a building block, and you'll see a little bit more kind of our thinking behind best practices that are research-based on how the brain works. And so I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to share that with you. And we have with us Rhonda Clyett, who is actually my boss. And so Rhonda, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. We're so happy that you're here. As Suzanne said, my name is Rhonda Clyett. I am about to have my 5-year anniversary at NEFAC. Prior to that, I taught at Lake Butler Middle School for many more years than I care to share with you, and then was also a reading coach at the middle school and then a reading coach at Lake Butler Elementary School. So all of my career prior to coming to work for NEFAC was spent in Union County, which I see a couple of my Union County friends on our list today. So hello to all of you. And I am the supervisor of curriculum instruction here at NEFAC, and we are so excited to see you. We love that there are a lot of returning faces from our wide variety of Tech Tuesdays that we've been offering this summer. So we're going to jump right in because we have a jam-packed session today. And as always, we want to hear from you because you have the best ideas. And so if at any point in time that you would like to share something in the chat box, and we will also give you opportunities to turn on your mic and share, we really want to hear from you. We don't want to do all the talking today. So we're going to jump right in. We sometimes like to start with a quote, and I like to do that in the classroom as well. I don't know how many of you have read the book, The Elephant Man, but The Elephant Man is the story of a teacher who who was really struggling, and then someone came in every day and put a quote on the board, and the kids really started responding to that. I won't tell you how it ends and who was actually putting the quote, but you should read that book. It's a great book. But we put a quote up here for you today. Writing is an exploration. You start from nothing and you learn as you go. And how many of you have been asked to write something before and you've had this blank piece of paper and you don't even know where to start? I think we've all probably had that writer's block feeling. And then suddenly the ideas start to flow, and that first piece is just a draft, and we're continually making changes, and maybe we ask others to give us some feedback. So we wanted to just get you started with this quote because teaching writing is messy. We didn't put that slide in there today, but those of you that have been with us before know that we talk about learning is messy, and writing is certainly messy. It's messy for the students, and it's messy for us as teachers. So we're going to give you some ways today that you can hopefully take back and use immediately in the fall with your students, no matter what type of environment we may be teaching in. And we'll talk about some of those ideas today. So here's our agenda for our time together. We plan to spend 9 to 11. And so we're going to spend some time just thinking about writing as a K through 5 teacher. What does it look like? Then we're going to share some strategies with you. So we have several that we will share in the K2 grade band, and then we have several that we'll share in the 3-5 grade band. And of course, you can take these strategies and you can change them and make them work and tweak them, whatever you do as a teacher for your students. We are going to give you a preview into the best standards for writing. Those are our new Florida standards. And so we just wanted to kind of give you a preview because Suzanne and I both are excited about the new writing standards. Some things have been brought back, and we're excited about sharing that with you. So we'll do that just for a few minutes today. And then, of course, we want to hear from you and hear your ideas. So we're always, probably as you, we are always looking for good books. And this is a book that we came across actually from some of our Levy friends. I think there's some Levy teachers on our session today. But Levy Coach shared this book with us. And we wanted to share it with you. Many of the strategies that we'll use today came from this book. And of course, we twisted and changed them and made them our own. But it is a great book. And so we wanted to share the title with you. You have access to this PowerPoint. And so you can go back and look it up on Amazon. I want to think, Katricia, I see you're on the call, but I think it's around $30, something like that, give or take. But it is a great resource. I hate to spend money on things that I don't use, but I think this will be one that we pull out time and time again.
And you'll see as we go through the course today how we implemented them, and we're going to ask for some feedback from you guys on how you might tweak it for your classroom to share with the group, because I think it's really important for us to go ahead and do that work. It's not just Chris had shared with me one time when he was in the classroom, he went to this great professional learning and it was on something in science. And he said he put it on the shelf thinking, oh, when I get to that section, I'll use it. And we don't want you to limit yourself. We want you to think, how are these strategies and how could I best use them? And we want to go ahead and do that work today while we're in the course. So I want you to think about, what are your struggles around teaching writing? Whether you teach kindergarten or 5th grade, whether you teach 10th grade, we've got another session this afternoon with upper grades. What are the struggles with teaching writing? And I've asked a lot of people that over the last few years because I struggled with it myself. And I had a great mentor teacher, and she literally taught a lesson and said to me, here, teach it. Here's the way you teach it. This didn't work for me. And I would go back to her at the end of the day and say, okay, this didn't work. How do I tweak it to make it work for my kids? And so I think there's such a vast array that goes into teaching writing, and having a clear perspective of how to break it down is really challenging, especially if you teach a lower grades like kindergarten or 1st grade where they're not truly readers yet. And so I want you to think about, what are the challenges that you face? What are the strengths and weaknesses you feel like you have as a teacher? When kids come to you, what are their strengths and weaknesses? And how do you actually narrow those down? So I want you to think about that as you go through today. And I think this book has offered some great tips for how to kind of categorize those stages and work through that. So I'm going to give it back to Rhonda to actually go over the hierarchy of some ways to break down these strategies.
All right, so we found this and we really liked the way that this captures the hierarchy of possible writing goals. So I want you to think just for a minute. If you look at the very top, you see composing with pictures. And I know we have some kindergarten friends on the call because we took a peek at your grade levels. And of course, a lot of your work starts out with you reading things aloud and then having the kids draw. But as you look down the hierarchy, you can see that as you go through, as you move up into those elementary grades of second through fifth, then you're really starting to build. You work on organization and structure and elaboration and word choice. So just for a minute, I want you to reflect, and we ask you to have paper and pencil beside you. So I want you to think for a second, and it doesn't really matter what set of standards we are teaching at any point in time. It doesn't matter if we were doing Common Core writing, if we were doing the LAF standards that we are currently using in our classrooms right now, or if we are making that transition to BEST, which will be our new standards. It doesn't really matter. This is a continuum. This is what writing, how writing starts, and then how writing grows as they move into the higher years. So I want you to think for a second. And I want you to use this lens to kind of frame your thinking. Where do you spend most of your time teaching? Think about your grade level. Which of these areas, and it's probably more than one, but my fourth and fifth grade teachers are probably not going to spend much time composing with pictures. Think about where you spend your time and just kind of, you know, in your head. Then I want you to think about, where are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, we're going to ask you to think as a teacher today, put on your teacher cap, or we're going to have you put on your student cap. So right now, I want your teacher cap. Where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses? I'm not going to ask you to share. Think about that for a second. Suzanne and I work with many, many teachers, and one that we hear most often is elaboration. And a close second to that, because we are reading teachers, ELA teachers, we want things to be spelled right and we want the conventions to be all right. So we also hear, you know, how horrible the kids are at those particular areas. But as far as an overall weakness on FSA writing, we hear elaboration a lot. We also hear vocabulary, because all of our kids are in rural districts and they may not have that rich vocabulary that we would like for them to have. So this is just a really good way to think about how writing grows as we move through the grade level and how it develops with our students. Of course, those of you that are third through fifth grade teachers, you have some data that you look at on your FSA data. Of course, this year we don't have those scores, but you know what it looks like from the past. And you probably have some sort of progress monitoring in your school where you capture writing data. I know some of our districts have a writing prompt a month in every grade level. Now that looks different in a kindergarten classroom from a fifth grade classroom, but many of you do that to kind of look at the development of students over time. So we just really liked this hierarchy of writing goals. So hopefully it'll be a help to you about thinking how the writing develops. And the strategies that we'll share today, we've chosen some from several of these sections. So we'll make note of that as we go.
So one of the things we have really looked to do is provide you, I think it's kind of the NEFAC way, we want to give you something you can take back and use tomorrow. And so we've pulled out strategies from all different levels and what it might look like to build a unit on this. So I want you to think about what this unit would look like for your students. You might be dealing with majority ESE students. What would that look like in third or fourth or fifth grade? And how could you build knowledge and build their writing skills using these different strategies? So go ahead, Rhonda, and let's look at the different strategies we're going to use, just kind of an overview. We're going to use, these are K-2 strategies, but I want you to think about if you're in a third through fifth grade classroom and you've got that struggling writer, how could you use this as that intervention piece to help kind of boost their writing skills? So talk as you draw, composing with pictures, retell your pictures, composing with pictures. Make your picture look like the picture in your mind. I think this is an interesting one that moves a little bit beyond composing with pictures, and we get into editing with this because you're having kids go back and really evaluate. So we'll practice this today. Writing across the pages is composing with pictures, it's generating ideas. You could use it for elaboration. So as we go through this, I want you to look for the hierarchy and where these fall. So as we go, I want you to both share in the chat if you have that epiphany of, oh my gosh, this would work so well with this unit or with this section or with these students. Please feel free to either share in the chat or raise your hand. And let's make this a collaborative session, because I think it's really important that we hear from you as we go. So of course, with development, when we look at students and the way the brain develops, it's really important that we understand that kids have to draw, especially young children. When they are writing, they don't need to be quiet. They need to draw a picture and then write about what they have drawn. That's part of the way the brain works and the developmental processes. So if you're teaching pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, they really should be doing some sort of art to kind of sync their writing in that and allow their brain to develop through those processes. So to have them talk as they draw allows, not only does it allow them to think their story aloud, but it also allows you to hear what they're thinking. And so that immediate moment of feedback as you're walking around and you're hearing them talk about the character, if they leave a key piece out, you can intervene right here. Or if you're having them draw about something that they should know, which is what we're getting ready to do, it allows you to see what they know and where they can progress forward with this. So I want you to think about today, how can you prompt them? But today you're actually going to experience this. We're going to do a session on butterflies. And I want you to think, Rhonda, would you hit enter, please? I want you to think about, with your microphone off, get your piece of paper out, and I want you to draw something that you know about butterflies. Now think with a kindergarten, first and second grade brain. This doesn't have to be fabulous. And honestly, we're not going to have you share this. But I want you just to take a minute to draw something that you know about butterflies. Now, I want you to think about, as you read, did you think out loud? Did you think to yourself, how would this benefit young children in actually talking as they draw, or maybe you walking around and questioning them? Oh, what else happened in your story? What else happened in this? Maybe your question is, oh, I see that you know that butterflies are symmetrical, and you're already putting that vocabulary out there before you ever get to the actual root of vocabulary. So all of those ways, that reading, writing, speaking, listening, those are the 4 components to learning. And we have to think about, how are we incorporating that even in writing? How are we having students read and then write? How are they speaking about their writing? And then how are they listening to others and generating new ideas? So as we go today, I want you to think about that. Do I have anybody who's had that moment already that would like to share? I see that Andrea put in here that she really appreciated the ideas flowing for elaboration. So Andrea, please feel free to jump in and share some things. If you have a thought of a way that this could work either in your classroom or in an online setting, we don't know what next year is going to look like at this point. So think about whether you're in an online distance learning, whether you're in a classroom, how would you have students collaborate if they have to sit 6 feet apart? How are you going to have them talk and engage in this in that setting? Or we may go back and everything is completely normal. What would that look like in your classroom? So I'm going to give you just a minute to turn on your mic and share. Raise your hand if you'd like, but if you want to just shout out, how would you engage this strategy in your platform in your classroom, depending on your grade level?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your question.
So how would you use this in your classroom at your grade level? What is some way you could tweak this strategy to make it effective with your students? Or it might be, oh my gosh, this is a unit that I teach all the time. This is a way I could do this.
I definitely like using the pictures just to, like I said, to even start getting ideas to just flow. I teach fourth grade, so I don't use this, but next year, even on virtual, using it on the computer, here's a picture, give me, just get some ideas flowing. Give me elaborate. Last year, we gave them a sentence and just tried to get them to elaborate on just here's a sentence, give me some background information, and they had troubles with that. So here's a picture, just get some ideas flowing and see if they could do that, and then give them the sentence later down the road. And then here's your articles, read it, and then give me some background information, build up to it. Because I don't know if they didn't have this in lower grade levels my students last year, or what was going on, but they had such a hard time with elaboration. So that's what I would use it for.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. And I actually taught fourth grade for 3 years. And one of the ways that my mentor teacher had me to start teaching writing at the beginning of the year is I made giant posters, and one had a picture of a beach that I had just drawn with markers. And I'm not a fabulous artist, but I did the best I could. And I had drawn with markers and used different colors and used a little beach ball and all kinds of different things you might see at the beach. And then we would write a story about the beach based on what they saw in the picture. And so it really was that before we ever got to a prompt, it was truly just a moment of let's open up our brains to thinking. And so I think that's a great way to do this. So awesome job. I love it. Denise said, we have journals that will give students a few minutes to draw a quick picture before they start reading. I love it. Awesome job.
And Suzanne, writing is hard. Writing is messy, like we said. And I know many of you do fall in that 3rd through 5th grade range. And you may not do the drawing part, but I, as an adult, when I'm typing an email, or they know just to ignore me if I'm talking to myself in my office, because I'm actually doing this. I'm talking as I write and making sure that it sounds right. So just that whole concept of, kids don't have to sit there quietly. It's okay to talk through it, even if it is text or a drawing. So I think there's connections we can make to this strategy for every single grade level.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to share before we move to the next strategy? Oh, Leanne says she's got some posters with pictures on them that she hangs in her classroom in the writing center. Oh, very interesting. So if they use the picture to write the story and then they read it aloud to their group. So this is maybe the precursor to that, where they're reading it or writing it aloud in their head. And so that you can hear them and maybe encourage them some different ways. So I love it, Leanne. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome. All right, Rhonda.
And just one more thing before we move on, we want to make those connections for you. Again, not knowing what the future holds of what school is actually going to look like. But throughout our day today, we want you thinking about, all right, if you have students sitting in your classroom, maybe they could work with a partner and they could talk through their drawing or their writing. If it's online, you might have an individual meeting with them. This might be fun to record their conversation. So we always want you to think about the future and what tweaks you can make depending on the environment that we're working in. All right, so this is a writing workshop, but as you know, all of our standards require that our writing is text-based, and that will not change with the new BEST standards. It will all be text-based writing. So this is an article called A Butterfly's Life, and these are all, you have access to all of these in the folder that I shared with you on the invite this morning with the link. So I'm just going to be quiet for a minute, and I want you, and you know that we're going to have you do something with this. So read with that in mind. I want you to take just a couple of minutes, it's pretty short, and read through this text on a butterfly's life. And I'm just going to set the timer for 2 minutes. All right, there's our timer. And in the virtual world, 2 minutes seems like forever, but probably not to you. But to Suzanne and I, it seemed like 10 minutes. Now, of course, again, we want you to think about the students that sit in front of you every day. So if you're a kindergarten or a first grade teacher, you would probably read this aloud to your students, right? And then the upper grades, you would release them to read on their own. Now, I do want to say 2 sites that we absolutely love are News ELA and or Newsella, as some people call it, and then ReadWorks. Now, I will say that we are always very careful about checking the complexity of the text. And so today we've given you a variety because we knew we were going to be talking to K through 5 teachers, but those are 2 sites that we like to pull resources from. So in the folder, you will see that noted. That all of the butterfly articles came from one of those 2 sites. So we're going to move on with our next activity. So this is where your markers or colored pencils or crayons, or if you want it to be black and white, you can just use a pencil. But this is going to be our second strategy. Suzanne introduced you to talk as you draw or talk as you write, as I admitted that I do. This one is called Retell Your Picture. So again, we're moving you up that hierarchy of skills and the development of students as writers. So this is a way that our kindergarten and first grade teachers can tie in writing with drawing. So what you're going to do here, the strategy is actually for them to create a picture, and then they're going to point to parts of their picture that teaches something about the topic, and they'll actually physically touch it and talk their way through it as they retell. Now, as a teacher, it would be a good idea to record that because you could see their development over time. It would be really neat to share those recordings with parents. And of course, you're in the virtual world. If you're teaching in the virtual world, that's really easy to do. But of course, we're going to have you participate in this today. And what I would like for you to do this time, Suzanne asked you to think about what you knew about butterflies. Now you've read a text about butterflies. So I want you to draw a new picture. Now in this picture, you have to have at least 2 things that you learned about butterflies from the text. So this is a text-based drawing. And then we are going to ask some of you to volunteer to retell from your picture, pointing to your details in your picture as you share. So I'm going to pause for a second. We're not going to give you a lot of time. So it doesn't have to be a masterpiece by any means, but if you will, and include color if you would like, draw a picture showing 2 things that you learned from the text. And again, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then I'll ask some of you to share. Okay, there's our timer. So we want some of you to volunteer to show your drawing. And again, we want you to point and explain the 2 things that you learned about butterflies from the text. So we have found through doing these virtual sessions that it works better if we stop sharing, and then it's clearer for each of you to see. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and so that we can see you better. So if you would volunteer to share your drawing and explain the 2 things that you learned, turn on your camera if you're comfortable and your mic, and just go ahead and share. Do I have anyone that would be willing to do that? Anyone that would share their picture this morning? I know 2 minutes was not a long time. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Who would share with us? Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead and turn on your mic for us because you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you.
I don't know if you can see my picture.
Okay, hold up. We've got 2 people sharing. Lether, if you could turn on your mic because we can't hear you.
Hear me? Okay, this is my picture.
Okay.
I drew the picture of the eggs on the leaf. The butterfly lays the eggs on the leaf, and um, I wrote down that it's coated with a hard covering that crystallites, and then as time passed by weeks, it emerges as a beautiful butterfly.
Okay. Thank you so much. Wanda, I believe you were trying to share. Let's go back to you.
I don't know if you can see it very well.
Yes,
We can. That's great. Walk us through it with your words.
Well, I teach kindergarten through second ESC, so a lot of my students draw without writing words. So I was just trying to put the color in the pictures. So obviously I drew a leaf with a little egg on it, and then I drew my caterpillar, and I was drawing the chrysalis.
That's great. Thank you so much for being willing to share. Anyone else? Time for one more. All right, that's okay, but be ready next time because you're going to have more opportunities. I couldn't help but chuckle as we were sharing, and I even said this to Wanda. Use your words. I laugh at my daughter, who is 28, and she has a 2-year-old, and it cracks me up, but it's like such a great teaching tool. She'll say to him when he's whining and just, trying to ask for something, she's like, use your words. Well, that's what we do. I mean, we ask kids to draw, but then we want them to share verbally. So I couldn't help but think about that example. So think about I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again. There we go. All right, think about if you were in the classroom and you had kids drawing and retelling their pictures. On the slide, there are some prompts that you could kind of use to try to get more detail from them because kids are sometimes really selfish with their words and they keep them inside. So just some ways to draw out some more from them. And again, if they were talking to you, online, it might be things that you could use as well. What is this telling about? You've all had that kid who held up a picture in front of you and you had absolutely no clue what they were trying to show. So asking them questions about that can be a really good way to save yourself and also to get them talking about the details that they have shared. Suzanne?
So we're going to do another strategy that would be kind of maybe take the place of that one. I wouldn't use all of these in one lesson, but we wanted to give you a plethora of ideas. So making a picture look like a picture in your mind would be that after reading piece that begins that editing. So close your eyes and picture what you're writing about. I want you to think about drawing it on paper. Then when you've drawn it, go back and picture that picture again, or maybe go back to your text and see, do these two things match? So it's that beginning stage of editing that really should be happening in kindergarten, first and second grade. I think Rhonda said something just a minute ago that made me go, that's so important. And I feel like sometimes we miss that, is converting kids' words into writing. And that's a really important step that we often miss. We take writing and make it totally separate. You have to be quiet. You have to think on your own. You have to do this on your own. You have to spell words on your own. You have to do all of these pieces of writing instead of making it kind of an organic process of, I'm thinking this, I see this, I'm editing it. Now I've edited my picture. Now I'm going to write about it. After I've talked and shared, and all of these pieces can go together to create great writers. And so I think this is an important strategy because it begins that understanding that my writing is not always perfect the first time. And so making a picture that looks like a picture in your mind about what you read is the next strategy we're going to look at. So some prompts would be maybe close your eyes and picture what you're going to write about. Let's add your picture, add to it, or check your picture. Is there anything from the article that really stands out to you that you didn't include? Go ahead and add that. Now let's step into the telling me about your picture and using the strategy that we just talked about with Rhonda. Then have them put that into words. And so that's why this one, each of these kind of builds on the last one. And it's that elaborating, that editing and elaborating piece that's really important. Katina says she uses her babies, she has them make a mind movie. And I love that. I know she teaches the pre-K ESE students, and that is an amazing piece for the students that need to be able to process a little differently. So I think that's a really great piece. Thanks for sharing, Katina. So as we go, the next step we want you to do is get a new picture out. And go ahead, and Rhonda, would you hit enter, please? I want you to go ahead and write or draw a picture about what a butterfly's life is mostly about. And you're going to include the life cycle in this. So draw a picture from what is in your head about the life cycle, and then we're actually going to go back to the text and have you make some connections to the text. So if you would, I'm going to give you just a minute because we've kind of already done this. And I want you to think about what you drew in the last session or in the last strategy and what you might add to that for the next one. And we're actually going to do this on a whiteboard. So I want you to think this through really clearly. I'm going to ask for 10 volunteers to share, because in a classroom setting, you're not going to have 30 or 40 people in an online setting or in your classroom. For most of you anyway, you will have maybe more in the 18 range. So if you were dealing online and you had half of your class, this would be a way that they could all engage with this activity. So we're going to ask for volunteers, but I want you to think really quickly about what a butterfly's life is mostly about and include the life cycle. Then draw a picture from what is in your head about the life cycle. So I'm going to give you just a minute to go back to what your previous drawing, or if you want to draw something new to do that, I'm going to give you 1 minute. I see some people have gone back to slide number 12, a butterfly's life. If you would like to go back and check your picture against the text, that would be a great idea. Rhonda's actually taking us back there. If you'd like to reread it, I want you to take just a minute and compare what in your drawing would match the text and what might you add to your drawing to make it a stronger representation of the text. I'll give you another 30 seconds to make any additions and edit your photo or your picture. All right. Okay, do we have some volunteers that would be willing to draw on our whiteboard? Rhonda's getting ready to display that. Anybody super brave and willing to try something new? Otherwise, we can always do the voluntold thing, but I really didn't want to do that. So she's got our whiteboard up, and the way you would draw on this, just so you feel a little more comfortable, is you would just use your mouse, or if you have So it's not going to be beautiful. Nobody's expecting perfection. So here I'm just drawing my little pupa, or maybe my chrysalis, I forget. So I want you to think about how you could use this in your classroom, as well as who would be willing to share. Andrea, can you access and draw on your phone?
So, uh, well, Andrea, you're asking the same question that I have. Are we just sharing our picture again? She says.
No, you're actually going to draw it on the whiteboard. Can anybody see the whiteboard? I can see
I
the
can
whiteboard.
see the whiteboard. Um,
Oh, it says
so,
whiteboard is for members only.
Well,
Learning is messy. All of you are now going, I can't see it. I can't see it. Is that your way of just getting out of doing work? I'm just curious. No, I'm kidding.
well, I don't know. Katricia can see the whiteboard.
yeah, but in the chat box, everyone else
But
is,
everybody
I'll
else
do it.
can.
Yeah.
So
Everybody
By
else shows
member,
up
it
as
probably
guests.
means NEFEC.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Well, you know what? I can go ahead and share.
they can't
So,
see it though,
oh,
Katricia.
they
So I
can't.
don't think it matters.
Okay.
So
Well,
learning
that
is
makes it even.
messy and no worries. I want you to think about how you could have students engage. That was the whole purpose of this. How could you have students engage with you in this online platform? How could you have them working synonymously or asynchronously, synchronously within your online lesson, rather than it be a sit and get or you're just talking? How can you actually bring them into the same space? And so that's really what that purpose was about, having you make a picture, checking it against the text, going back and editing it. How would that look like in a collaborative setting, either online or in your classroom? It could be in your classroom with kids very far apart. If they all have access to Google products, how could you use Google Classroom in order to do that? And so that's really what the purpose was, for you to kind of get a hands-on experience of what it looks like and feels like. So I see Andrea has included her drawing here. I love it. She actually used her phone and drew right on it. So I just learned something, because I've done a lot of these webinars and I did not know you could do that. So that is fabulous. Thanks for sharing, Andrea. I love it. Would you like to talk through yours? I don't know if she can.
Yeah, I mainly, sorry, I'm
That's
on
all
a
right. Go
boat.
ahead.
My picture is mainly just the life cycle. That's what I got out of it. As I was reading it, I was actually highlighting the first, this is what happens. So I included the egg. Second, this is what happens. He turns into a worm or a caterpillar. Then he gets into a chrysalis, and then finally he turns into a beautiful butterfly. So that's what I drew. And then at the bottom, I wrote the steps because I didn't know if you could tell what it was.
I love it. So as a teacher, can I look at this and very quickly tell, did these students understand? Was Andrea, did she get the main idea and the supporting details from this text? So I can very quickly judge where she is and where she may need intervention. And so that's another reason for this. It allows me to very clearly see my students' thinking. So thank you, Andrea, for being willing to share. And I might have to get some tips later on how actually you did that, because that was really cool. So thanks for sharing. All right, so we have another strategy we're going to share.
all right, so as you can tell, we've started to add words as we're moving up that continuum or that hierarchy. So this strategy is called right across the pages. And as you know, it's not always about reading a text, but it could sometimes be listening. And so we want to use different forms of media. Probably all of you are familiar with Gail Gibbons and all of her books about nature. So we're going to take a second and we're going to keep our fingers crossed because Suzanne and I tested this out yesterday. So I'm hoping that you're going to have audio, but we're going to listen to this as an additional text. Now, I always like to know what's coming, so I'm going to go ahead and share the directions so that as you listen on the video, you can be listening carefully and know what we're going to be expecting. So this is called Right Across the Pages, and this is why we ask you if you had sticky notes handy. That would be great. If not, you can just take a piece of paper and you can draw 5 squares. In the classroom, you might have kids use index cards or maybe whiteboards and divide them into squares, or the older kids, it might be Google Slides. We're going to have you do something with slides in a little bit. But what you're going to do is, as you read, of course, we want to get them to the stage where they're writing, and we want to introduce them to the fact that a topic always has an introduction, and then you have some supporting details. We're going to ask you for 3 details today, and then you have a conclusion. So we're going to ask you to start out as drawing because we have our kindergarten and first grade teachers in mind. So you're going to have 5 sticky notes or 5 blocks on a piece of paper, and you're going to draw a picture of the introduction, 3 supporting details, and then a conclusion. And then we're going to ask you to go back and put some text to that. So that's going to be the assignment. So I just wanted you to have that in your head before we start to listen to the video. So fingers crossed that this is going to work and you're going to be able to hear it.
We're going to try and read this book again. I'm so sorry the recording messed up the other day. Today we're going to be reading about monarch butterflies by Gail Gibbons. We are going to be watching the butterfly life cycle. I have a butterfly life garden set up for you guys that I will show you pictures of and videos as our butterflies grow. So that's why we're reviewing the butterfly life cycle. A monarch butterfly settles on the leaf of a milkweed plant. She gently presses a tiny egg onto one of its leaves. The egg is the beginning of another. It's summertime in the north. A breeze stirs the stem of the milkweed plant. The monarch egg is white and shiny. It is the size of a small dot and sticks to the leaf. When the butterfly lays the egg, she makes it sticky. Wind and rain cannot make the egg come loose. Take a moment and turn and talk to your partner. What have you learned about the butterfly's egg so far? So a butterfly's egg is very sticky. That way it will not come loose is one thing we've learned. Now we're to caterpillars. In a few days, the egg hatches and crawls out a small caterpillar or a larva. First, the caterpillar eats the eggshell and then chews away at the milkweed leaf. The egg of a monarch is almost always laid on a milkweed plant. The plant will be its food. The caterpillar eats and grows and begins to change. It breaks out of its old skin, showing a new skin underneath. This is called molting. For 2 weeks, the caterpillar eats and eats. It molts about 5 times. Finally, it has a full-grown monarch caterpillar, about 2 inches long. Turn and talk and tell your partner something you have.
All right, we're going to go ahead and stop there. I'm going to have to escape for just a second so we can get the screen right. Of course, with kids, you would take the time to listen to the entire book, but just because we want to make sure that we're able to show you all of the strategies that we have planned today, I'm just going to stop it at that point. So I've kind of already explained what's going to come next. So what I want you to do, I'm not sure what's happening here. My directions are not wanting to show. Suzanne, can you? No, you can't. All right, my directions are disappearing. So I'm just going to say it again. On 5 cards or 5 sticky notes or 5 blocks on your paper, I want you to have an introduction, 3 details from the text, and then 1 sticky note that will represent the conclusion. So you should have 5 pages total. This is called right across the pages. And so I want you to draw a picture first, and then I want you to add text to your picture. I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes, so it'll be just a quick sketch to give you an opportunity to do that. And then I'm going to have some of you share your text by turning on the mic and reading your intro, your 3 details, and your conclusion. So go ahead and be thinking about if you will be willing to volunteer for that. 2 minutes. All right, you have about 20 seconds to put your last minute details and make sure that you have some text added. All right, there's our timer. Could I have someone who would volunteer? You can just turn on your mic this time and read us your introduction, your 3 supporting details, and your conclusion. Do I have anyone that would volunteer to do that? I'm actually going to stop sharing so that we can see better.
Rhonda, I wanted to share, while they're thinking if they would like to share, I wanted to share the example. We actually use this in a professional learning with teachers. And if you have different color sticky notes, this is a great way for kids to be able to see they need an introduction and a conclusion, and then 3 separate details. So we actually had large, like 1 foot sticky notes, and we had groups of people work together on them, write out their things, and then we had them on the wall all around the room. So it was just a fun way for us to be able to use this strategy. So I wanted to share that with you just to give you a picture of what you might do with your students. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Suzanne. I had written that down as well because we love that, because it not only gives them a place to record their words, but it gives them a way to see
Rhonda, we just lost your voice. We must have lost sound altogether. You're not back. Can you guys hear us?
I can hear you, Suzanne, but not Rhonda.
Okay. Oh. Okay, I'm going to mute and turn my camera off and see if that helps. Okay, for some reason Rhonda's frozen, so she's going to jump off for a second. Did we have anyone who would like to share really quick? Denise said she loves the sticky notes to help organize their thoughts. She'll definitely use that. Rhonda just had a giant Suzanne on her screen. That was all she could see. So is there anyone who would like to share? All right, I'm going to go ahead and try to present, and we'll move to the next section.
I don't mind sharing.
Oh, okay, that would be great.
I drew a butterfly, a monarch butterfly, and I wrote monarch butterfly's life cycle on my first sticky note. And then I drew a stick with a leaf on it and an egg, and I wrote egg, and I had a picture of a butterfly there too. And then I wrote milkweed, summertime, and sticky, and that rain can't hurt it. And then I drew a leaf with a caterpillar eating the leaf, and then drew the chrysalis so that they could form the chrysalis. And then the next one, it had the chrysalis, and the butterfly forms and eats the chrysalis and the leaves to grow. And then the next one shows the chrysalis already eaten, and the butterfly formed, and then the butterfly flies away.
Awesome, very detailed. I love it. Thank you very much for sharing. And I liked Anjana. Was it Anjana that just spoke?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't tell it for sure, but I thought that's who it was. Did you find that you went back to the text and added to your picture?
Well, I went to my other pictures and added to those. And then once the text was read, that's when I added summer and sticky and milkweed and the eating of the chrysalis for strength and building.
I love it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Rhonda, are you back with us? I don't think she's back. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to move on to the strategies to inspire for the 3rd through 5th grade. Now, just because those are listed for 3rd through 5th grade doesn't mean that they couldn't be used in K-2. So I want you to think about how you might tweak them to make them work for you at your grade level. So we're going to look at finding a theme in your collection, which is a really fun tool that I actually used with middle schoolers for elaboration, starting with a plan in mind for organization and structure, and then surprising verbs for word choice. So I want you to access your pre-read text that Rhonda sent you in the link. One is called Climate Change Playing Havoc with Butterfly Migration, and the other one is Misplaced Monarchs, Clusters of Butterflies that are Stuck Up North. So if you would go ahead and access those two, and we're going to use those two new articles in our next strategy. So this is finding a theme in your collection. And honestly, I did this with, I believe it was 7th and 8th graders, and they loved it. And some of the things that came out of this were so, the conversation was so rich and deep that I really loved this strategy. This actually is part of one of the strategies in the book, but we tweaked it to make it fit because I felt like this was such a powerful tool in a classroom. So we all know that kids love hashtags, and honestly, the world loves hashtags. Who doesn't love a hashtag these days? And it makes things easy to go back and find. It's a really quick summary. So before you begin drafting your writing, you want to go back to your text and look for your hashtag. What would you hashtag if you were pulling something from this article? And so really it's the central idea and key details. So you can either have them look for individual paragraphs and what would they hashtag each paragraph for, or you could have them hashtag the two different articles and then come up with one main idea from those two different themes. So what I want you to think about is if you were a teacher and you were giving kids a tip, what ideas keep popping up? So I want you really quickly to look back through the articles that you just used, look for those patterns that you've seen, and then write some sticky notes with hashtags that might be your key details for those articles. So you should have access to those. We wanted you to pre-read them because we really don't want to spend a lot of time looking at that in this. But I want you to consider the text and use sticky notes to write down key details. You're going to write those with a hashtag. So they're a quick, short summary. It's not a long sentence. It is just an overview. So if you were to come up with two, one for each article, what would your hashtags be? And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and put those in the chat for me. I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. So not a long time. If you haven't read the articles yet, pull them up really quickly. Actually, I will pull them up really quickly for you. Let me stop sharing this screen. And I have the articles up here. So let me share again. Now that we have it up, here's this article, Climate Change Playing Havoc with Monarch Butterfly Migration. And I'll let you look at it for just a second. And go ahead, once you have it, go ahead and start putting your information in the chat box. So what would be your hashtag for this article? The climate change wreaking havoc on butterfly migration. Rhonda, did you make it back in?
I am back. I am just on my laptop, so if you would keep screen sharing, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, we've got our first hashtag, monarchs fighting climate change. I love it. Laura said climate change, hashtag climate change. Awesome. What else? Anybody have any other thoughts on this one? Get to the end of it. You might not have had time to read it. These were some really good articles, by the way. If you teach older grades, this would be a great way to bring that in the springtime. Climate change and monarchs. Lost monarchs. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Maybe it brings up some conversation on, are they lost as in extinct? So now we have a whole new word we could bring in. Or maybe the misplaced monarchs. I love it. Maybe they're just misplaced. Maybe we don't know where they are. I love it. Confused monarchs. Good one. So these are the things that happen. And I happen to be in a class that they do a process called DBQs. And they were reading in a history class part of the articles. Then they take those same articles to reading. And so as they read, then they added extra articles. And so they started this big compilation of all of these hashtags, and the conversation was just like this: nomad monarchs, confused monarchs, milkweeds for monarchs. So you have, all of a sudden, you have a reason to prove it. You can start this dialogue between students of why did you choose that? What were you thinking? And so all of a sudden, this thinking that was going on in the room was really exciting. And I think, honestly, I believe you could do this with kindergartners with text you read to them. So think about what this, oh, Monarch is in Wonderland. I love it. Can monarchs adapt? Very, very cool. All right, so I'm going to give you just a second to look at this misplaced monarchs, clusters of butterflies stuck up north. And so maybe some of you were already reading this one, but I want you to think about the two of them. If you could narrow it down to one, what would your overall topic be? What would your overall main idea or central idea be of these two? And how would this help you bring writing into a very fine point for 4th and 5th grade? Where you really do have to take maybe 3 or 4 articles or pieces of text and put them together into one key detail or main idea. How could you use this? So I want to just give you a minute to think about that. Feel free to share in the chat, raise your hand, share out in any way you would like. Keep sharing your hashtags if you have some other ones you would like to add. I love it. Climate affects monarchs. That's a good one. So that now we can talk about cause and effect, right? The future of monarchs. Struggling monarchs. Oh, we've got 2 right back to back that we're struggling. Good. How can monarchs survive the unknown climate? So now we've taken a hashtag that we've heard from other people and we've created a sentence with a question. So that is the natural progression of what happens in writing. When you're having kids think and share and collaborate, the natural thing that comes next are questions. And so that can then drive our writing, right? So awesome. Will monarchs survive? Beautiful. You guys are amazing. So Denise, I think the question here is how can you use hashtags when you're trying to work on conventions and proper grammar? That's a great question, but I feel like it's 2 separate things. Right now, we are brainstorming the central idea. How did we get a central idea of each of these paragraphs? We're not at the writing stage yet. So then in 7th and 8th grade, and actually the hashtags are part of the DBQ system, and they begin with looking at the theme or central idea using hashtags for each of the paragraphs or articles, depending on what it is. And then they have this overarching picture of what they're going to write about. And so then that writing goes to the next stage, which Rhonda's going to talk about in just a minute. And then you start getting into conventions and grammar. So it's kind of that building block. We now have processed through what this text is about. We now have narrowed it down to just a few things: monarchs battling, unknown future, struggling monarchs, the future of monarchs. So we have a huge theme here about monarchs and their future. So now we have something as a group to really hone in on. So Rhonda, do you want to go ahead and talk to the next piece? And then can I hear you? Do you have your mic on?
Yes, can you
Okay,
hear me?
perfect. I'm going to close my door because I can hear you through the door.
Can you go ahead and share your screen too, just in case I still have some technical
Okay.
issues?
All right,
So
let me get back
this next
to,
activity, as Suzanne is sharing her screen, builds on the one that she just had you do. So she had you narrow down to a topic. So this stage of writing is about the planning piece. And I know lots of kids, like to skip this step, but it really is important to help get our thoughts down on paper and to plan before we write. And so this one is called Start with a Table of Contents. Suzanne, if you'll go back, please.
oh,
Something
sorry.
happened.
I actually was trying to type to someone and hit the wrong key. Sorry.
All right. So you're going to start with a table of contents is the name of the activity. So what you're going to do here is you're going to start with that topic, that hashtag topic that Suzanne just had you develop. And you're actually going to plan out your paper. So you're going to think about what are the subtopics going to be? And you can also think of that might be a paragraph or a chapter to a book. If you look at the example here, they did it a couple of different ways. So the topic is at the top. Then they had three subtopics and then some facts that would come underneath. And then there's just a table of contents. This one happened to be about tree frogs. Chapter 1 is going to be about characteristics, 2, habitat and diet, and 3, the adaptations. So what I want you to do, thinking about the articles on monarch butterflies, I want you to just sketch out a table of contents. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do this. In fact, you may have some graphic organizers that you use in your classroom for writing that work wonderfully with kids, and that's perfectly fine. I know some kids like to do the topic in the middle and then branch out with maybe the 3 details and then branch out further with the facts that they're going to share. So whatever way you want to capture it, I'm just going to give you 1 minute because you already have all these things in your head because we've had you reading all these articles today. So just sketch out a table of contents. You can probably predict what's coming next. We are actually going to have you write. So think with that in mind. So sketch out a little table of contents, 1 minute. I'm not going to ask you to share. We'll just jump right in. So 1 minute, just get it sketched out. "30 seconds. All right, there's our timer. So this is all about them just getting their thoughts down. I really like the prompts that are a part of this strategy. It's helping them think about how they'll break it apart. And if there's not enough to go under their subtoppings, then maybe that's not something that they need to write about. And that gives you some discussion points with students. So Suzanne, if you'll go ahead and advance, you probably know what's coming. We can't have a writing training without having you write. So we are going to ask that you write a real quick, and of course you're not going to have time to finish it in 3 minutes, but in 3 minutes, get as far as you can. We're going to write the beginnings of an informative essay about those effects that the climate change may have on the monarch butterfly. And of course, this is text-based writing, so you must use information for the passages. So we're going to ask you to write. I do want everyone to write. Now, we're not going to ask you to share this, but our next strategy builds on this piece of writing. So it's going to be important that you have at least a little paragraph in front of you. So for 3 minutes, go ahead and write, everyone. about 2 minutes left. All right, 30 seconds to close out your thoughts, kind of bring it together. All right, there's our timer. So if you were actually working with students, of course, there would need to be an opportunity for them to write longer, first of all, but maybe an opportunity for them to share with a partner, read their text. So there would be some other steps that would happen between this. But we were trying to take you through a portion of the hierarchy. So we're going to move ahead. You need to keep that writing out because our next activity will build on that one.
All right, so we're going to look back through your writing that you just did, and I want you to either highlight in a different color marker or use a pen to circle any of your verbs. So go through your text. I'm going to give you about a minute to go through looking for your verbs. This strategy is called surprising verbs, and you're going to look back at your own writing and see how you can change those verbs. So I want you to look at the options that they've given here. So the ocean waves were crashing. Instead of crashing, you've got crushing, oppressive, never ending, relentless. That's a great one. Trapped. So you're just kind of drawing out beside. I want you just to go back and brush up your writing based on your verbs only. So sometimes a neat connection is if you are using surprising or strong verbs, then you don't need adjectives as much or adverbs as much in your writing. So I want you to think about really boosting just your verbs, and we'll give you about a minute to do that. So find your verbs, think figuratively, and what does this look like, sound like, smell like, taste like? How can we increase that level of rigor just a little bit on those words? So we'll give you about a minute. As you finish this minute, we're going to ask that you go back to the PowerPoint so you can minimize my screen. I want you to go back to the PowerPoint, go to slide number 22, and I want you to type in your old verb and your new verb. So what was an old verb that you used, And how would you increase that level of reading? How would you make that stronger? Go ahead and just pick a slot and put your old verb and then add your new verb to it. I see a lot of people are on the slide already. Awesome job. Ooh, I love it. Someone said eat, and they chose the word devours. Dropped, to decrease. So in this setting, I want you to think about how would you offer this to students. So keep going, keep adding things to it. I want you to think about how would you have students do this activity? Are you going to have them brainstorm themselves? Are you going to have them in groups, or maybe brainstorm on each other's writing? Would you maybe make something available to them in the form of online? Could they Google and look for some other words that might go with that? Maybe you've got some form of dictionary that might provide that for them. So we've got from change to metamorphosis. Ooh, that's a good one. Start, change to initiate. Lays, and they've changed it to deposits. Hatched, emerges. I love it. These are amazing. You guys are awesome. So I just want you to see this is just another way for students to be engaged in an online setting. And if I share it, then it doesn't show what's being put in here. So I'm not going to share it. I mean, I'm not going to present right now. So we've got feed, ooh, to feast, gathered to clustered. So you can see if your students were writing in this fashion, how it would increase their writing. And to give a 3 minutes or 5 minutes writing summary, every kid in your class can write something in that short period of time. If you ask them to write for 45 minutes the first day they come to class, it is not going to happen. But if you're teaching them in small chunks, this is ways that we could embellish or elaborate on our writing. Now we're getting better and better. And I always, one of my favorite sayings is success tastes really good. And if we can ever get kids to taste success the first time, they want more. And so providing them tiny ways that they can be successful and then supports and scaffolds to get there is going to give you a huge payoff in the long run. And so I let, oh, the word dwindle. Instead of discuss, the word lecture, migrate, relocate. I love it. These are amazing. So thank you guys for playing along. That was a really awesome example of what you could do with students. So Rhonda, I'm going to go ahead and present, and we're going to move into the best standards preview for writing.
So Suzanne, before I go there, I wanted to just tap into something that you said, because we often, particularly in the upper elementary grades, we often think that we have to have them writing, you know, a full essay time and time again. And that's why we called this a preview. We wanted to give you some ways that you could do some quick writes. And as Suzanne said at the beginning of the year, you have to build their endurance, not only for writing, but their endurance for reading lengthy texts that are going to be put in front of them. So keep those things in mind as you're starting to plan for next year. So we wanted to give you a real quick preview into the best standards. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to look at those yet, but Suzanne and I have spent some time this summer studying them and have had some conversations with Just Read Florida. And Suzanne, if you would just go ahead and advance. Just briefly, I wanted to give you an overview of what the writing standards are going to look like. So there's a section that's called Communicating Through Writing, and there you will see the different topics, the different types of writing that are going to be included. There will be handwriting standards. Notice those are for K through 5. And of course, that will build up, you know, to cursive handwriting. Then you have narrative, argumentative, and expository. Now, notice all of those are K through 12. Narrative in the past with our LAF standards started to die off as you went up into the grade levels. No longer the case. Narrative writing is going to be carried through all of the grade levels. And then there's a section that's called improving writing, and that is just the fine tuning, the crafting, really taking it to that publishing stage of where kids get feedback, not only from you, but from one another, and they continually to improve their drafts. So if you have not taken a chance to look at these, of course, there's descriptions under each one, but I am really happy about how the writing for the best standards is going to be laid out. Now, we know there's a transition. We'll still, as far as we know, we'll still be testing on FSA type of writing this year. But KN1 teachers, you can start to look and start to make some of those transitions. So we just wanted to give you a little taste of that and just kind of get you thinking. But do know that we are also in the process of planning some writing full, either half day or full day sessions, kind of depending on what school looks like in the fall. But we will be offering some detailed writing training, moving and making that transition into the best standards. So look for that. Your district will receive notification about that, and a possibility that some of that may also be virtual. But just know that that's coming up in the fall, both for elementary and secondary. Suzanne?
Sorry, I had muted myself. All right, so we really want to move into your thoughts at this point. It could be something that has triggered a thought from what we did today. It could be moving forward, what do you need to do, or how could you use this in your classroom? It could be something about the new standards, or it could just simply be, this is an area I really struggle, and I would appreciate some professional learning in this. That's one of the things over the last few weeks in particular. I've hit up a lot of my friends who are writing teachers and coaches, principals, and said, hey, what is it that your people need? Where is it that you're hearing that they have gaps? Where are their struggles? And so I've spent a lot of time the last few weeks trying to really kind of get to the roots or the base, the foundational areas that we have needs in our districts. So in order for us to best serve your needs, give us some feedback. You can do it on the chat. You can turn on your microphone and talk. This is really your time to share. So please feel free to share, to question, to add ideas. I see Denise has put something in the chat that I absolutely love. They have a journal, and every single day students write. That can happen from kindergarten to 12th grade. There's no reason that students can't have 3 to 5 minutes every single day to write. And of course, in your writing grades, that's going to be something you build up. Andrea said we do too. It might be an online journal. That might be the new way, because if we come back to school and students get sick and they send us back home again, how can that look? How can you set your classroom up to best prepare students for tomorrow? And it might be that having a paper hardback journal isn't the answer anymore. Maybe we're teaching kids how to write blogs. My son has become famous on TikTok. It's this crazy world that I don't really understand anymore. But you think about these hundreds of thousands of people that are making lots of money by blogging, travel blogging. How are we setting our students up to be prepared for the future? And maybe it's teaching them how to access an online journal when they're in the classroom in front of you, and then at home they can access that same form of journal. So there's not this giant transition if we were to have to go home again. So I want you to think about, how can you set this up in your classroom for your students to have success at a kindergarten level all the way to 5th grade? What would that look like for you? How can you prepare them? And then feel free to share. So we have another, I think 25 minutes or so. We want to hear from you. So we're going to, at this point, one more thing before I release you to share your thoughts. I want you to think about your artifact that you're going to do or produce for your points. So we have opened this up to, you have to take at least 3 of the Tech Tuesday courses. but you can do an artifact from any of them. So if you choose to do some form of writing as your artifact, or you have students hashtag you can tell that's my favorite, I know, but you have them hashtag their central idea and then create a writing based on that. All you're going to do is share that with us. So it doesn't have to be from this session, but if you choose for it to be from this session, it could really be a broad range, really anything that we've shared today. You could use that strategy and share it. So I just wanted to say that, and then you guys go ahead and share. So please go in to chat. I see a question about what kind of platform would you recommend for online journaling? I think that's really open, and it depends on your platform. Some of our districts have Canvas, some have Google Classroom. I actually use Google Classroom with my first and second graders. Back in the days when I was teaching, was in the early days of Google Classroom. That's why I feel like it needs to be taught how to do it in the classroom, and that practice, because by 3 or 4 weeks in, I didn't have to tell my first graders where to go any longer. We had bookmarked it. They could click on the bookmark, go right in. They would actually write as first graders a sentence and then have to respond to 2 people. A really cool thing, last year, those first graders were in 6th grade, and I actually got a message through Google Classroom from those kids. I guess they had bookmarked it on their home computer as well, and I got messages from them through that. So it was kind of a neat platform to have them share and just get used to putting their writing down. So if you have an idea for a way to help Denise out, please make sure, I think it was Denise, yeah. Please share how you would do an online journal. So please feel free to click on and speak, use your microphone and share. I'm gonna mute myself and stop sharing my screen so that you guys can all see each other and share.
So Suzanne, I wanted to go back to Andrea's comment about using websites like Padlet. Padlet is a great way just to kind of pull everything together, like your multiple texts. We like to use it in the office for trainings where we can share resources and put them all in one place for you. But with students, you can do the same thing, and then it sends them to certain websites or to certain articles, and then you could gather everything there, and they can actually write on Padlet as well. So they could create a text box and do writing. So that's a great idea. And Katina talked about setting up the classroom where we read aloud to them to write the room. And I'm assuming, Katina, you're talking about using words around the room, like from the word wall or on charts and things. Would you like to turn on your mic and share more about that? Or did I pretty much capture it?
Yes, that's what we do, because we're pre-K ESE, and I have ages range from 2.5 to 5 years old. So we start off day one with them signing in their own handwriting, or however they see it. They sign in their name, because that's them owning themselves. Then they get to see all of the other classmates that done signed in. Then they're able to write about, we talk about who's here today. And we put that into a writing as well as a group. Then we take it and put it into small groups as well. So we're writing all around our areas in our pre-K, because we got multi-centers for the babies to be in. And in every one of them, we call it Writing the Room, because wherever you go, writing and reading and math and all of that entwines with each other. So we expose them to all of that at once by doing that, having them to be able to go on their own feelings toward their friends, their classmates, and getting to know their classmates simply by seeing how the different age ranges are signing in. And this one talks about, oh, he said this his name, things like that there that they do. But that's kind of what we do and how we started with the babies. And
right, thank you. That's great. That's a great example of writing the room.
Kelly, I have to say, from my experience at this middle school, that they started in the history class, and the history teacher or the civics teacher gave the foundational understanding of a concept. So one of the ones that they really were focusing on toward at one point in the year was civil rights. And so they gave the foundational pieces of civil rights and talked about the definitions and things like that. And they read some articles, and then they took those articles to the reading class, and they read some articles in the reading class in addition to the two that they brought with them. And then they took all four of those articles and went to the ELA class, and that teacher added two more articles. So now they've got this vast array of articles and pictures and graphs and all of these different things that went together, and they did the writing. And the power that came out of that, and the kids, I mean, they really owned it, because anytime you're writing across subjects, it's powerful. So I love to see that you're doing some of that in second grade. That's amazing. And I think that's a really neat piece that's important for kids to understand. We're not just writing because we have to, we're writing because this is part of reading and it's part of learning. And that passion can then come through because they have a really great understanding of what they're writing about. So that's another piece of writing that I think is really important in elementary schools, and it opens itself up to that very easily. So thanks for sharing.
And Kelly, I still had you in kindergarten in my head. I had forgotten that you had gone to second grade, but I mean, you have that whole picture of that transition from them using pictures and then learning to read, and now you're in that transition year of reading to learn. So that's great, because you have that whole hierarchy. You've had experience with that whole hierarchy.
Who else would like
Jessica.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Jessica, I love that connection of using Padlet to have them brainstorm hashtags. That's great. And then they can see them all at once and steal hashtags from one another, see if they were really capturing that central idea. That's a great idea.
Anyone else would like to turn on their mic and share a thought that they have or an experience that they have with writing? You guys are a quiet bunch. We haven't had a group this quiet.
They are quiet.
I work with special needs kids that are non-writers, and I use pictures all the time to try to get them to, if we've watched a video or we've done something, they have to create a picture of what they just learned. And this year I helped them to learn sight words, so I could see how I could use the picture idea and then have word cards that are maybe pre-done so that they can choose words to go with their pictures. Even though they may not know how to write the word, they have a word available that they can put with their pictures.
I love that, Anjana. And I feel like our kindergarten and first grade teachers could easily adapt that. Even if it wasn't for special needs students. That is a great idea. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Andrea, I noticed that you typed in Flipgrid. Can you turn on your mic and maybe, for those that may not be familiar with Flipgrid, just give a little brief description? I think she was on her phone. She may not be able to do that.
You know, another one, we've been in several courses lately with Pear Deck, and they have some writing tools in Pear Deck that you can use. So in a sharing system, you have kids log into their Pear Deck account or to the code that you give them and answer some questions through Pear Deck. I think that could be done in a similar way, especially for online or social distancing, even in a classroom. I think that would be a neat way to have kids engage in it.
I think Andrea was ready to share.
Oh, awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, that's fine. I thought I had unmuted my phone and I was talking. But I was in a virtual Monday class yesterday, and they taught us all about the different websites that we could use, and Pear Deck was actually one of them. I couldn't think of the name of it. And Flipgrid was the other one, where you can post a question and they could actually it's a recording thing, but it's another way you can get them to elaborate before writing, I guess. It could go along with the pictures. I I was actually thinking it was the Pear Deck one. But it's a flip grid, so you can post a picture or the question or a picture or whatever you want to post, and then you can get them to record themselves, or they can make their own flip grid and share it where they write something, and it's like a kind of like a slideshow.
Right, thank you. And those are two good ones that if you're starting to plan for the fall, you may want to do some investigating. There's tons of YouTube videos out there that kind of show you how to use virtual tools. So that might be something that you might want to make a note of and come back to. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited that all of you are here. There may be some of you that are joining us for the afternoon. The strategies will be a little bit different, and of course the text will be different. Our afternoon is dedicated to secondary teachers, so that's 6 through 12, of course. We're going to hang out for a few more minutes if anyone has any further questions, but we look forward to seeing you on future Tech Tuesdays. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
I've done a lot of the Tech Tuesdays. I do 2 each Tuesday. And so by the time I get done, I will have done about, I don't know, 12 or 15 of them. And you said having a product. My students, I have difficulty getting them online and doing the same thing at the same time. I set up a Google Classroom and the parents didn't make sure they attended. So how do I need to pick and choose what I respond to on the ones that I've done? So I don't have to have a student product?
Yes. So you don't have to have a product for everyone that you do. For every 3 that you are attending and you want points for, Rhonda, do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, for every 3, you can just do 1 product, and the product doesn't have to be student work. I mean, it could be, you could do a little blurb about how like you mentioned, your kids do a lot of drawing. So I think some of the strategies that we shared at the beginning of today's session, you could just tell us, some of the things that you're going to do with your kids in this particular session related to writing. But for your kids, it may be like, the design with the pictures, or the using your words to retell. So, I mean, we live in gray, and so you can just send us something. And I mean, as long as we can see that you are using some of the strategies or some of the technology, I mean, it doesn't have to be something by your kids.
Okay. And you're going to give us the way that we need to turn it in?
Yes, actually, because we almost have a month behind us of Tech Tuesdays, we're going to send out a Google form, and you will actually tell us, which 3 you attended, and that's why we always ask you to put in your name and your school so we can verify attendance, and then you'll submit that 1 product. And Andrea, I do see your question there. Yeah, we're trying to make it as easy as possible, so just 1 artifact for the 3 sessions. And then if people do more, like I think you've been on every week, so we will kind of have a staircase of more points if you want to do products for more than the 3.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Katina, are you and Letha going to be working together at Mosley?
No, not that I know of, but
Oh,
if she
okay.
knows something I know.
All right, you just said yes, she is going to be
Thank you.
amazing. So I didn't know if y'all were working together. I was going to say that's an awesome pairing.
Yeah, we always bounce ideas off each other.
That's amazing. That's the best thing about teaching, I think, is getting to share it with other people. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
She can't help but be fabulous because she has a fabulous partner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jessica, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. Thank
Okay.
you. So I have scheduled one more, at least one more for my Tech Tuesday. I've only done, this is my second one. Would you like my artifact after I do the third one, or because after this session I already have a plan of what I want to do?
Yay!
Yeah, it'll have to be after your third one so that we can just verify that you did join in on 3. But if you already have your artifact in mind, you're ahead of the game. It'll just be a matter of filling out that Google form, and I promise it'll be really simple.
Okay, awesome. And I could just like make it on a Google Doc and then share that link with you?
Yes, there will actually be a way to attach it in the form. So if it's a link or if it's, you know, a document or whatever it might be, you'll have a way to attach it there. We're trying to make it as easy for you and us.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely love the picture idea and the hashtag table of contents. I'm incorporating all that.
Good.
Thank you.
Awesome. You just made our day.
All right, well, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too.
Thank you.